Miguel Pereda, bienvenido a los Iberian Property Investment Talks. Miguel Pereda es Lar España Board Director y CEO de Grupo Lar. We are now seeing an unseen crisis. What are the fundamental ideas, consequences for real estate that come along with these days?
That's a difficult question to answer. Well, in this moment, I think it's quite difficult to know what the effects are going to be, and one of the reasons for that is that because we don't know for how long this closing, let's say, is going to last, that will make a big difference. I think that as far as every week this period is extended, probably the view that we are having on the effect in our industry is also changing. But I think it's very important to make the difference between what are going to be the short-term effects and what are going to be the long-term effects. What are, let's say, structural changes that might happen, and what are just stress short-term situations that all companies are going to address. The first thing that is happening, and that's what I see in my company and in my colleagues, is that the priorities of real estate companies have changed in the short term. And now we are addressing, as I said, this short-term situation where we are putting in place plans. But on the other hand, we are trying to guess, depending on the length of the situation, what are going to be the effects in the long term of our companies and our business, how the model is going to change, and also very important, what are the opportunities that this new situation is going to bring, and how we are going to be able to take advantage of them, depending on the situation of each of the companies.
Grupo Lar has developer an important pipeline of investments. I can imagine your works are now stopped because they are in Spain. But will the investment plans and the new developments will keep on, or at this moment everything is under balance?
One of the things that is happening is an increase in volatility in general. Because clearly the environment that we're going to find is less positive, the economy is going to suffer, the consumption is going to suffer. Clearly we're coming from a growth scenario into something that is going to be less positive. So that volatility brings to the table a strong difficulty to see what the new environment is going to be, what the new prices, what the new assumptions that we need to use. So I think that, yes, I think that talking especially about development, we need to make a big distinction. In one hand is those developments that are going on now, I mean, that have the planning, that have financing, that probably construction work has already started. And I don't see many changes on that. For example, in Grupo Lar, we are doing residential developments. And as you probably know, the works were stopped for only like 10 days. It's true that those developments are not now evolving at full speed, but they are having quite a decent activity. So that's good. So I don't see in those launch developments, let's say, a big difference. A different story is with new developments, and there's I think a big difference there. First, I think it's linked to that the priorities of the company change. So looking to liquidity, trying to imagine what the competition is going to be in the future, that makes a big change. The second is when we talk about activities where pre-leasing is important, like in retail, for example, we are going to face a situation where retailers in general are reconsidering their expansion plans. So it's very difficult to know what support you are going to have from the brands, and it's very difficult to know what is going to be the pre-commercialization that you're going to be able to have. So in that respect, that makes things more difficult. And in terms of financing, probably it's the same thing. I'm quite positive in the sense that it's true that there is liquidity in the market. I think that it's very different, this crisis, if we can call it like that way, than the one that we saw in 2007. But I don't see banks willing to finance new development. So all that together make me think that development plans are going to slow down in general. In the other hand, and linked to the volatility that we spoke at the beginning, what are going to be the returns that we need to ask for new developments compared with investment, with all the market in terms of yields, returns might be moving, and it's difficult to have a firm opinion of what the returns need to be. And of course, development should be always more profitable than a normal investment because the risk is higher. So that's also something that I think is going to affect the development market in general. I think, as I said, I don't have I don't see risk in the ongoing developments, but it's more in the new pipeline where the change might happen.
Miguel, but the risks you were mentioning are not the same across all sectors. Correct. So you can be more willing to do, for example, residential than retail?
Yes, I fully agree with you. I think that the effect in the different sectors is very different. And it's also different in the short and in the long term. So what that change is going to be. Clearly, the more affected sectors have been hotels and retail, and that's because, the activity is closed, and that makes a big impact in the short term. And it's a different story probably in residential, where some of the sectors, and we can probably residential for rent is going to be one of the sectors that will be less affected, or even more will have a bigger push with this new change. So yes, I think that hotels and retail will be more affected. I think that the change from residential for sale to residential for rent is a change that the speed of that change will increase because of all those changes that we are seeing. And probably logistics is also something that at least is not going to change the trend, and all these new retail environment where retail internet sales are growing, etc., is going to increase the attractivity of that sector. So it's going to be very different. In terms of offices, probably the main question mark that everybody is having is how those two effects of more this new type of work that we are doing in those days from home, but in the other hand, what is the space per person that in the future we're going to need? What is the speed of the flex space market? How is going to be this percentage in the office market, etc. So the effect is going to be very different.
Digitalization was a trend in the market, and now is speeding up with this crisis.
Absolutely, I think that everybody was talking about digitalization and technology as one of the tools that we should use in our companies in all the phases of our business. Now has become more important. I think that this high-speed course that every citizen has done in the last 6 weeks is going to change the mentality, and I don't think it's going to change the trend, but it's going to change the speed of the change. So those companies that were better prepared to address this situation, that is technology or innovation linked to technology etc., will have a strong competitive advantage. To start now will be more difficult because, as I said, I think that the speed of the change has increased dramatically, and that is going to affect everything. I mean, not only the product that we offer, but also the processes that we use in our internal companies, the way that we connect with our clients, with our providers. So all the system, I think, will increase the need and will increase the speed of implementing this type of technologies. Yeah.
For real estate companies like yours, what is the key success at this moment? Liquidity, balance sheet strength, technology, build on opportunities. What will make the difference for the future?
In the short term, liquidity is the main thing. I think that now that there's volatility in the values, there is volatility in the markets, having liquidity and having a strong balance sheet has become like the first thing, and that's probably the main worry of investors when they approach us, when they talk to us. The main worry is how solid is your situation, and if this stress short-term situation is extended, for how long you can be saved. So liquidity is the key. And having a strong balance sheet also. So if this situation lasts for longer, you can be, let's say, suffering. Everybody will be suffering, but you can be saved. Also will be very, very important trying to address opportunities in the future. I mean, if you are too worried or too weak in your liquidity in the short term, will be very difficult to be thinking in different things. And markets are going to evolve, and the speed of the change is going to increase. So having this part solved will allow companies to be better prepared for the change. So for me, that's the key. The second is trying to imagine how those trends are going to change the market, and then how we need to adapt the existing product and the future product, the development that we were speaking before, to this new reality that we are going to find. So, and that's probably part of the magic. So working with the short term to be sure that your short term is solved, but also having an eye on the long term and how the industry is going to evolve. Technology will be a strong part of that. First, to understand what the situation is, and second, how you are going to implement. Probably the big problem that we are facing is that trying to imagine the future probably cannot be based in the past, because the effects that we are having and that they are changing the industry is something that we never saw before. So we need to do a big effort in trying to use all data and trying to imagine new situations. In my view, in any case, I think that, as I said before, we don't see dramatic structural changes. What we see is that the speed of the change, the speed of the trends that we were already speaking about is going to increase dramatically.
Miguel, you are a member of the board of a listed company. The quotation is dropped hugely. So the markets are discounting too much on your share. What is the perspective of a huge dividend yield? Because Lar was always in the last quotation already giving a very generous dividend yield. So now the Lar España will be a cash cow on dividend?
Yeah, I think that the situation is we had in general in the stock exchange a very strong volatility in the last weeks, and that has affected probably all companies and all sectors. The problem with Lar and with the retail companies is that we were already not well seen by the market, and there was a lot of, in my opinion, misunderstanding when they were trying to transfer what was happening in the United States and trying to extend that to the continent and to all companies. So it's probably a use that retail, that was not well understood, that was already suffering. And then on the top of that, we had this storm in the stock exchange that has damaged all the shares and ours also. So yes, that's the case. I think that when you compare the values per square meter, when you compare what is your, say, discounted gap, if you take into account the value of the company today, well, it's easy to understand that I think that there has been an overreaction. On the top of that, I think that the history of Lar España, the main points that was critical mass, strong assets in the right location, etc., is even more valid today than it was in the past. If we think that the development pipeline is going to suffer, if we think that the difference between the good assets and the bad assets is going to increase, and we are very sure about that. If we think that critical mass in terms of management and relationship with tenants is going to be key in the future. If we think that investment in technology, in retail, is going to be also one of the factors of success, well, that is even more important today. And the strength of Lar España in all those aspects is even now more or higher than it was in the past. So that's why I'm a strong believer that we are facing a financial situation, we are facing a market turbulence, and that is affecting the companies, not only us, there are others, in a higher way than what the proper analysis will make sense.
Miguel Pereda, many thanks. It was a very big pleasure to have you with Iberian Property. Many thanks.
Thank you for your invitation. Thank you very much. Pleased to be here.